Welcome back to Important Library Stuff, a podcast where library staff share the inside scoop on all the stuff that happens at Prince William Public Libraries. And trust us, it's a lot of stuff. I'm your host, Emily Bickers, media specialist from the Office of Communications and Marketing, and I'm joined each episode by fellow staff members and special guests who know a lot more on each episode's topic than I do. Today we'll be sharing librarian-certified tips on how to find your next favorite read. I'm joined by our experts, Kirk Johnson, Assistant Library Director for Materials Services, and Shannon Ball, librarian at Montclair Library and member of our Readers Advisory Committee. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
Right. Thanks for inviting us.
All right, so first things first, what are your 3 favorite books?
Okay, I'll go first. So I probably said this the last time I was here.
Okay, so they have not changed.
This one hasn't, anyway. So the first one is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. The second one is Funny Story by Emily Henry. And then Here We Go Again by Allison Cochran.
Okay. I dreaded this question because I don't really have books that I identify with a lot. But I'd say at this point in time, if I had to pick my 3 favorite, it would be A Fan's Notes by Frederick Exley, Reconstruction by Eric Foner, just because of the impact it had on me, and Moby Dick by Herman Melville has actually crept its way into being a book that I go back to every couple of years.
Very nice. Thank you. So do you keep a TBR, to-be-read list?
If you had asked me this last year, I probably would have said no. But this year I decided that I was finally going to tackle the books that I actually own. So I made a fun little list to make it fun so you can check things off. It is going terribly. I've read 4. I've come to realize that I picked out a lot of these books when I was a very different person.
Right.
So I'm not enjoying them as much as I thought I would. I'm struggling. But there are some on there that I'm excited for, and I'm looking forward to reading them once I get to them. For some reason, I'm making myself go in chronological order of publication date, and I'm a mood reader, so that doesn't make any sense for me to do. But I'm just if I have to just pick randomly, there's ones that I'm just not going to pick. So if I force myself.
So are you ever comfortable stopping a book if you're not feeling it?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like that's
Absolutely.
an important,
There's too many books to read in the world to stick through a book that you don't like.
Exactly. Yeah. What about you, Kirk?
I have a similar situation to Shannon. I was in graduate school part-time for many, many years while working here at George Mason. I got a master's and then was pursuing a PhD that I never finished. And two things happened then. I had continued occasionally buying books, crime novels and so forth, that I didn't have time to read. And I also accumulated a lot of books for practicums, for seminars, for my comps that I skimmed or, just kind of read, bits and pieces of. And in the last year, I've gone back and just kind of systematically gone through both backlogs. I've been reading a lot of these books that I thought were going to be my reference set if I ever finish my PhD, and also a lot of these mysteries that have just been gathering dust for over a decade. And so I've been kind of bouncing back and forth. Last fall, I was reading one work of academic history after another, and this year, starting in January, it's been one police procedural or crime novel after another. So that's kind of my list at this point in time.
Do you know how many are on the list?
It's a visual, so it's daunting. And then there's other things. I mean, I have a spreadsheet somewhere on my laptop at home with books that I wrote down. I mean, my list is sort of a meta tracking a lot. My goal is to have read everything that's currently unread in my possession by the time I retire, and that's about all I can shoot for.
I love that goal. Shannon, since you have written out your list, do you know how many are on it?
It's it was at 48. Now it's at maybe 40.
That's good progress.
Well, I did cheat by doing some of them in December, and they were super easy, romance books that I read in a day, and I was on vacation, so I had lots of time to do that. Now I'm at the older books. And that's a lot harder.
It's good to give yourself some quick wins in between, the other ones that you want to read.
Absolutely. About 4 years ago, I started making every year on January 1st, starting a list of every book I read cover to cover during the year. And it's a little motivating towards the end of it. And you see, you're like, it's October and I've only read 1, 2, 3, 4. So I need some 150 pagers to pick up the pace.
For me, it's like, all right, graphic novels and manga can help me out here. How do you personally add to your TBR list? Or are you kind of in stasis until you get through what you have now?
That would be a lie to tell you that I'm in stasis. Because, I work in a library, so I'm by all the books all the time. So they kind of just find me, to be honest. I've already started writing a list of things that I want to read after I get through the list. But I'm not buying any of them. I'm going to use my library card.
Yeah. I can't pretend that I'm sticking just to that list. I'm working on it. I try to, the rule I established is if I buy a new book, that has to be the next one I read so that it doesn't get, so I don't, exacerbate the problem, so to speak, and trying to get back on track. I'm doing a fairly good job of that. But all sorts of things. One of my favorite leisure readings is biographies of bands or musicians. That's if you see me reading a book here at work, it's 9 times out of 10. I'm a lunch break, just to be clear. Want to make that clear. If you see me reading on a break here at the office, 9 times out of 10, it's from upstairs at Chin Park, or I put a hold on it if they didn't have it. A biography of a musician or a band, or sometimes I have to use ILL. The last ILL request I read actually was Grit, Noise, and Revolution, which is a history of Detroit rock music up to 1972. Cool. And I had ILL that one.
And just briefly, ILL stands for?
Interlibrary Loan.
Which we will cover in a little bit.
Yes. I work in material services, which means everything we get passes by me. And so I'm like, if I put a book on hold 9 times out of 10, it's because I walked by a cart down here and saw it. Or, I'll see an interview with someone and find out they wrote a book 5 years ago and we still have it. So, things just trickle in. The real world has a way of interfering with my plan to doggedly work my way through my personal backlog.
So similar to you, Shannon, as a mood reader, I hear that some folks keep adding to their TBR list, but when it's time to start a new book, nothing on it really jumps out to them, and they end up in a bit of a reading slump. Podcasts are not a visual medium, but listeners should know I'm pointing at myself as I say this. How do you choose the book that you want to read next?
Well, as I'm currently in my own book slump, I don't have the best advice, but usually if I'm 50 pages into a book and I don't feel compelled to read it like every night, I'm just not going to finish that book. I'm just going to skip it. Clearly, clearly it's not catching anything for me, so I'll return it or donate it depending on whether or not I own the book. Sometimes I'll just listen to an audiobook if I feel like I can't read myself, but I want to read and do other things at the same time. I'm the type of person who has to do something while they're doing an audiobook because if someone reads to me, I'm just asleep.
Hard same.
Okay, so I want us to cover all the ways that the library and its staff can help people discover new books because they don't have the luxury of walking through material services and seeing everything as it comes out the way we do. So let's have a lightning round where you both trade off with an example and briefly explain it if needed. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. If I'm reading nonfiction, a lot of times, particularly history, which is my favorite, the bibliography is actually a great place to go look. That's a great way to look for further reading on the subject, or if I finished a book and I want to read more, I'll read through the bibliography. If I've stumbled across something while reading it, I look at the footnote, I make a note, that's something I might want to look at as well. So I would say that's for nonfiction, the bibliography is a great place would you like to know more, so to speak.
Another great service that we have is called My Next Read. It is run by the Readers Advisory Committee that I'm on. So it's a short online form that's just on our website. It's just for adults 18 and older, but the more you put into that survey, the better. Librarians can help you find your next read and give us about a week or so, and you'll get personalized recommendations right in your email inbox or put directly on hold for you, your choice.
Awesome. Yeah, I have used that service before and it's helped.
We have some resources on the digital library, Novelist Plus, I've used a lot. A while back, I really wanted a good takedown of writers' workshops because I sort of have an axe to grind with them. And I have a couple friends who are products of them, and they've both done fantastic. One of them is a published novelist. We have a couple of his books upstairs. But I mean, I just kind of wanted someone who'd just kind of taken the wind out of some sails. And Novelist was great at that. It allowed me to kind of, it wasn't just generic, I want a fiction. I was like, I want a fiction that's set, MFA, satirical, and I can't read the book, but I found it, and it was a great read in a kind of a mildly spiteful way. So that's I'm a big advocate for that resource.
I do use Novelist Plus a lot for teen and like children's recommendations. I used to read a lot of YA. I don't read it as much anymore. So I find myself on there looking for more recently published things. They do have a lot of like curated lists there as well. And I think my favorite thing about Novelist Plus is when you go to a specific title, there's that option to just click the link for checking PWPL's catalog for you. So you don't have to open your own window and type it in the search yourself. Another good place to look is always book displays at the library. I know all of the branches do really fun, creative ones. For February at Montclair, we did a Valentine's and like anti-Valentine's display, like side by side. So we had one full of romance, and the other one was mostly like horror and mystery and thriller books, in addition to a bunch of Black History Month displays for all ages as well.
I'll also add that our online catalog, if you click on a book that you're interested in, if you scroll down, you'll see more in this series if it's part of a series. And you'll also see You May Also Like section, which will show books that are similar to it, which are really helpful.
The catalog functionality is a good one, the different sources we have. And the Reader's Advisory Committee does great work, I really have to say. We work with them a lot on making book kits, and just now starting to expand to doing YA and juvenile book kits. And that was done in conjunction with some of the school librarians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, library staff for sure is a good resource.
Yep.
I think another good way is to join one of our book clubs. Not only does it give you assigned reading that you need to do, but I was even talking to some of our staff who run the book clubs, and they get recommendations from people attending them because you all have similar interests and, are reading even beyond the book club. So there are also reading challenges that sometimes you can just read any book, but sometimes they have like prompts. Like I know during winter reading, it was read a book with snow on the cover, so that can help you branch out and find something new. On our website, we have lists of books that have won awards. Each year they get updated. So that's a great way to find the acclaimed literature that's currently being published. So do you have any special tips, or are there specific resources that can help with finding books for kids and teens?
Well, Novelist Plus, definitely. There's even a K through 8 version of it. But even if you click on regular Novelist Plus, that's still an option in there too.
Oh, cool.
When we're looking for recommended reads on the Prince William Public Library's app, there's a little section called Recommended Reads, and the Reader's Advisory Committee will pick titles every 6 weeks or so to add to that list. A lot of the time, I will use Novelist Plus to find teen novels as well as books for children. That's how I find a lot of the more popular, not necessarily popular, but books that are related to those more popular titles that might also spark interest for kids. I guess another resource would also be Teen Book Cloud, which is a lot of, it is a catalog of ebooks that you can read on a browser or your tablet. There isn't an app, but you can still read it in a browser, on a tablet, or your phone. That one I think is notable just because it does have a lot of ebooks that are in other languages that we might not physically own because those are hard to find. So there's a lot of variety, I would say, on Teen Book Cloud too.
For the littles, we have Tumble Book Library as well. And then, of course, asking youth services staff and just viewing all their displays.
Oh, absolutely.
I found that youth services staff are really plugged in.
Yeah, I go to them for advice for things too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there a way to see which new books and other items are being added to the library's collection before they even hit the shelves?
Well, we have a service called Wowberry. Anybody who signs up for a Wowberry alert gets it on Wednesday. You can custom tailor your report. It's a nice report. It tells you what's come out this week. And I can tell you from Material Services, we pay a lot of attention to it because it drives holds a lot. Mm-hmm. It really drives what gets put on hold. So when our selectors click on their Wowberry email first thing in the morning to see what to expect to get requests for, i.e. we might need more copies.
Yeah, if you want to be number one on the next Emily Henry book, that's the place you need to be.
Yeah, you got to subscribe every Wednesday, check it. So I asked all our staff to weigh in on this issue and got some additional great tips. So the top 5 ways they said they discover the books they read are, number 1, are recommendations from other library staff, which makes sense. Number 2 is Wowberry. Number 3 is reviews on social media. Number 4 is library displays. And number 5 is recommendations from friends and family. So I'm giving a special shout out to this write-in piece of advice because it was adorable. My 5th grade teacher comes into the library usually once a week. She follows Wowberry closely and is always in the first round of holds for new books. I've gotten so many great reads from talking to her about what she's checking out. And then here were some additional comments and tips that people added. If you're checking a book out from the library, feel free to try something new. You aren't losing anything if the book is not a fit except for a few minutes of your time. When checking out ebooks or audiobooks from Libby, there's usually a sample available. That's another great way to see if you're interested in reading and listening to more without having to hop on a hold list or check it out and then have to return it. Another one was normalize asking people what they're reading all the time. If you chat with a person ringing you up at a store about the weather or weekend plans, ask about what they are reading too. It's okay to judge a book by its cover. If something's jumping off the shelf at you, take a look inside and see what you think. Add the text read-alikes with titles and authors that you enjoy in internet searches. You know, if you really like this one book, it'll help you find books that are similar to it. You can follow your favorite authors or publishers on social media or sign up for their newsletters. They share what's coming next, and authors will sometimes share what they are reading, which can be a cool way to see how they are inspired. And then this last comment, I watch documentaries and sometimes become fascinated by the topic and then search the library catalog so I can learn more. I'm going to add one more myself. Every Thursday from noon to 1 p.m. on Facebook, X, and Threads, we host Ask a Librarian, where you can ask for recommendations or even just read what that day's librarians are reading and recommending. If you miss that hour window, leave a comment anyway with your question, and it will be saved for the following week. You mentioned interlibrary loan earlier. Mm-hmm. Do you mind explaining what that is? Because sometimes, you can hear about a book on social media and the library catalog does not have it. Is there any way for them to buy it or borrow it?
Yeah, so you can always put in a request for suggest a title for us to buy a title that we don't have. But keep in mind, we can't buy everything. And with very rare exceptions, we're not going to buy something old unless it's being rediscovered by a popular book club by like Reese Witherspoon or someone, or being assigned in schools or being made into a movie. We're not going to buy a book that's more than a year old, almost never. So for all those reasons, if suggest a title doesn't get us to buy what you want, there's interlibrary loan. And interlibrary loan is when one library borrows a book from another library, where it could be Fairfax Public Libraries or George Mason's Fenwick Library or Harvard or whoever. They let us borrow their book for one of our patrons. And it's managed differently than regular holds request. You have to do it through the interlibrary loan portal, which is on the website. So it's not for if you need instant gratification, it's not the place. But if there's a book that we don't have that you really want to read and it's either out of print or you just don't want to buy a copy, you can put in a request. You have to create a separate interlibrary loan account. But we have staff down here at Material Services who Monday through Friday work the interlibrary loan desk, so we're pretty responsive. We don't charge anything for the service. Some libraries will charge to lend, and that charge is passed on to you. We don't charge to lend our stuff. But for example, Harvard, it used to be $25. I don't know what they have a lot of stuff that no one else has, and so it makes sense for them. And so that cost is passed along to you. But we first off look for nearby libraries so we can save on postage, and then we also allow you to tell us how much, if anything, you're willing to pay. 99% of the time, it's free. If you're a serious researcher or a genealogist or need something esoteric, you may from time to time need to pay, write a check for $15, $10, $20 for something from an obscure research library or an Ivy League university, but overwhelmingly that's not the case. And so we can get genealogists and family historians use interlibrary loan a lot. People with an interest in older books or obscure topics use it a lot. It's a great service, and it's used every day.
So in the spirit of recommending books by talking to people, what are you both currently reading, and which book are you most looking forward to reading soon?
Oh, no. I'm reading Baby Teeth. Basically, it's a thriller, and I'm not hugely into thrillers anymore, so it's been difficult for me. But it's about this woman who thinks that her child is evil, and she is. She is evil. It's like a dual POV, so like you have the mom's point of view, and then like this little girl who I will say is terrifying. It's kind of like a what was that? It's kind of like the movie Megan, you know?
Yeah.
It's like the demonic doll who's like, you know, meant to be like a little girl who's like your best friend. So it's mostly about like her struggles with motherhood, but it's sort of manifest as like an actual real problem because her daughter is, I don't know what her daughter is. I'm not that far in the book. But that is what I'm currently reading. I'm only about 90 pages in. It's not even that long of a book. And I have not felt compelled to pick it up again. So I don't know if I'm going to finish it. I feel like if it's a thriller, you should always feel compelled to pick it up if it's a good one.
Yeah.
So I might not finish it. I don't know.
Going back to my three favorite books, I am actually currently rereading Moby Dick again. I just started it. I just finished a Higgins book, The Mandeville Talent, and so I just picked up Moby Dick, and I haven't even gotten to Ishmael and Queequeg haven't even met Ahab or signed on for the Pequod yet. So it's very early days. They just took the ferry from Nantucket to New Bedford, so I know what comes. The whale wins. Spoiler alert.
Just in case you don't know.
Just in case, sorry.
Just in case you skipped that in high school. I will say that there was a book I read recently from my list called Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink. That technically is like a mystery thriller. That one was really good.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that one. And I just kind of picked it up on a whim because, ironically, there was a book club at the library that I was working at the time. And they were reading the book. And it looked interesting. So, you know, a couple short years later, I decided to pick it up at a bookstore because it was on sale. So it was pretty good. I don't know what I'm looking forward to on the list, to be honest. It's a long list, and I can't really remember what's on it. I know there's some that are coming up that I have started before, and then for whatever reason, like I think I had them as library books, most likely, and I ran out of time to read them as an ebook, and I just returned it and then never rechecked it out. So there's lots of those coming up that I'm not looking forward to because I'm like, well, why didn't I finish it? But it was that long ago that I can't remember why.
Yeah, that's rough.
But I'm hoping there'll be good ones in the future.
I have the same, you know, what's coming next. I took a break from my backlog to reread Moby Dick, as I mentioned. But I think what I'm looking forward to next is for New Year's resolutions, my wife and I made a pact to recommend one book to each other because we have extremely different reading interests. Mm-hmm. We for the most part like the same shows and the same movies, but we read very different things. There's no overlap at all in our book collection. And so I've decided I think the book I'm going to recommend to her is Mothers of Invention by Drew Gilpin Faust, but I haven't read it since I haven't read it in many years. I remember it being very good, and I remember thinking that she would like it, but I've decided I'm going to reread it first to make sure. Mm-hmm. So she's not going to read it till summer, so I've got time, but I think that's kind of been in the back of my mind, and she hasn't asked me yet, hey, have you picked a title? So I think after I finish with Melville, I'm going to reread that just to refresh my memory. And it's a really good book. I mean, I kept it because I assumed I was going to reread it someday anyway, but now's the time.
That's awesome. So any parting thoughts or tips?
If you read something and you're really interested in that topic, don't be afraid to just dive in. The library catalog might have even more titles. And like Kirk said, if you're reading nonfiction, bibliography is a good place to start. And you get that through an interlibrary loan too. I won't tell you guys how long I spent hyperfixated on The Challenger because I read the book, which took me forever to read because it's a long book. It was a great book, though. I really fell down a NASA rabbit hole after that. If you've never read Hidden Figures, that's another great book about NASA. That's more history-focused, less narrative history.
Well, thank you both so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I will close us out with a quote from the book reference in the episode titled The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Thanks for listening, and join us in a month for the next episode of Important Library Stuff.